Repeated attacks have happened in the past few days on India's sovereignty by Khalistani groups in the UK, the US, and previously in Australia. Even as Bharat Punjab chief Amarpal Singh is on the run in Punjab, back in India. Here in India, we have large numbers of Sikhs protesting outside the British High Commission against this insult to the Indian flag. To better understand the underlying situation, we have Pandit Satish Sharma ji. He is author, Caste Conversion, A Colonial Conspiracy, and an authority on dharmic issues. And we have with us Ramnik Singh Mann ji, an expert commentator on Indian politics. Namaste and welcome to Citti Media's Vaishali Dialogue. I'm your host, Advocate Shreya Agarwal, and I welcome you to the show.
Jai Shri Ram, Shreyaji, thank you for hosting this and for bringing us together to have this conversation. It is vital that wise heads start to talk about this and start to explore some of these issues. There are so many pitfalls into which we could potentially fall, and a lot of harm could be done. So I congratulate you for bringing us together to have this conversation. And I'm delighted to be in the company of Ramnik ji, who I've been following for a while. And I would just like to give my namans for his extraordinary work in this. A pleasure to be with you, Ramnik ji. Sat Shri Akal.
Sat Shri Akal, Namaste, Jai Hind to both of you. Thank you for getting me back on your channel. Shreya, it's been a while since, I was on your channel. You've been chasing me, but I couldn't find time. So thank you again for inviting me. And I hope this goes well today.
Absolutely, I'm sure it's going to be really well. So we'll just begin right away with the issues. So as we're all aware that a group of Khalistan supporters have taken down the Indian flag and attempted to hoist the Khalistan flag on the Indian High Commission in London. On the same day, Khalistani supporters broke open the makeshift security barriers raised by the city police in the Indian consulate in San Francisco and installed two so-called Khalistani flags inside the consulate premises. Similar attacks have happened in Australia, however, in temples. Can you lend us some more perspective on these attacks, Panditji?
Thank you, Shreyaji. So I was with the High Commissioner in London yesterday, and also with the High Commission only a few days before that. I was saddened yesterday to see one windows broken, and secondly to see the High Commission putting barbed wire on the balcony as protection. And, my heart felt that we have lost something. This is another step away from a tranquil, happy, prosperous time where people are working together. It was almost as though those who want to use violence, they had managed to succeed just by changing the nature of the very High Commission itself. And I understand from my sources that today there are a large number of extremists who are taking coaches to go down to the High Commission and to engage in similar activities. These are not peaceful protests. We all value the capacity for peaceful protest. It's fundamental. If you have an issue, we want everyone to speak about their issue so that together we can find solutions. But the manner in which the protest, as it's called, suddenly transforms into an ugly mob, it's almost as though the credibility and the sanctity of our gurus has been stolen by a mob of thugs. And they use that ancient, incredible, untarnished purity of reputation in order to be able to violate and to create violence and to break laws. We have to find a way of dealing with this. Many of our youngsters, potentially, they don't know the history of Punjab. They don't know the history of Bharat. They don't know the manner in which we all came to respond to the civilizational threat, which started some 1400 years ago. I was born in the Punjab. My first few years were spent there, and I remember going into Gurdwara and enjoying the atmosphere of a silent strength and humility. It automatically made you feel like you wanted to bow your head at the feet of these incredible human beings who embodied and created a tradition. The tradition of Citti. It's almost like a lighthouse, isn't it? For so long, it has been a tall, imposing lighthouse shining a light throughout the ages, and it's their sacrifice which fueled that light. So I grew up in Gurdwara enjoying this incredible moment of reverence and worship that we had. And so when I see the hooligans who are attacking buildings and the identity of a nation, there is nothing to do with Sikhi present in that moment. It's a madness that takes them over. And whatever madness has been used to radicalize them, we have to find a way of dealing with this. I'm hoping today's events will not add to the already fragile situation as it is in a negative manner. I'm hoping that once the protest, if a protest it is, has been conducted, then we can move beyond it and start to have grown-up adult conversations.
Absolutely. Coming to you, Ramnik ji, what are your views on what has happened in the past few days?
See, I think the West essentially has given a platform to all sorts of separatist organizations uh, or organizations which have been propped up by themselves, not just in India but everywhere else in the world, because you see West as a safe haven for separatist elements from across the globe. That is number one. Number two, well, there is a selfish interest of the West to keep the rest of the world at tenterhooks or keep them destabilized, especially when you come to India. They would always want India to be in a jelly state. They wouldn't want India to melt like butter per se and get dissolved like, you've seen Iraq in the past, and Syria is yet another example. They don't want India in that position. That's how they look at it. And they don't want India to solidify its position at the global stage, like Russia, China, or other developed Western countries. So they would always want India to be deprived of that real position that it deserves at the global stage. And therefore, they would always provide an open platform for separatist elements, which would, create some kind of a disturbance in India, whether it's a large scale disturbance or it is a minor disturbance. We've seen in the past that there were people who were caught in the US for funding of Kashmiri separatists. And God willing, if the government of India is persuasive enough and they, really get on the job done. So you will see a lot of Khalistani elements also being persecuted in the West. Well, that was one. The other question that you asked was why are temples across the West are being desecrated or they're being targeted. So the simple answer to that is, well, since they're not been able to divide the community, when I say community, I mean to create a wider wedge between the Sikhs and the Hindus. So they want to extract a reaction out of the majority community in India, and it can be an isolated incident which can be blown out of proportion. They want to extract a reaction from the Hindu community where a Sikh probably would be, beaten up, hurt, or perhaps even killed for his identity, which has happened in the US so many times, but these Khalistanis won't speak out. So they want to extract one reaction and then play on it and tell the world that, see, India is an unsafe country for Sikhs and therefore we deserve our own homeland, and try and justify what they demand, or their demand of Khalistan. So this is essentially the thought which goes behind what they're trying to do today. When you talk about the attacks on High Commission of India in London, they only try to bring this up at a global stage so that they can gain traction in the media or attention amongst the masses in the West. See, the Westerners, perhaps, the white man, if I may dare to say, wouldn't understand Gurmukhi, the script. So therefore, essentially, what should have been an emotion and Khalistan could have been written in Gurmukhi script beneath the flag that they've created for Khalistan. It's written in English. So they know that the Gora Admi, the white man, wouldn't understand Gurmukhi. So it's, essentially, it's a propaganda. So the propaganda only succeeds when the white man or the Western people can read and understand what's written. So therefore, not in Gurmukhi, but in English. So there are several reasons why you can conclude that Khalistan is purely propaganda, and there really no intent to actually get a homeland, but to only destabilize India. While they ask for a homeland, Sikh homeland, their demand is only on the east of the Radcliffe line, that is Indian Punjab, if you may, East Punjab. So West Punjab has been totally kept out of the idea of Khalistan or the maps of Khalistan, or perhaps even the discussion of Khalistan. So that is one circumstantial evidence which connects these Khalistanis with the Pakistanis. So you know where it is coming from.
Shreyaji, if I can pick up on a couple of the incredible, wonderful points that Ramjit has just shared with us, students of history will know that the origin of the Khalistan idea was seeded by the British in Canada in a Vancouver Gurdwara to break the Ghadar movement during the times of the struggles for freedom from British enslavement. We will also, what Ramnikji has just said about the support that the British voluntarily and as policy have given to these groups is readily apparent. History also has taught us that the Gora Sahib, as Ramnikji has just alluded to, has a history of pitting brown people against brown people. And, we really do need to move beyond being vulnerable and prone to this divide and rule strategy. It's worth remembering and reminding your audience that only a short few months ago, when Sikhs were being attacked in Afghanistan, there was no mention of the Canadians, the Khalistani movement in Canada, or here in the United Kingdom, saying, we're going to send support, we're going to rush over, we're going to put money in to send flights to rescue them. Not a single remark came in support of those poor beleaguered fellow Sikhs. It was the Indian government that sent planes to rescue them, to prevent any more of the Guru Granth Sahibs being burned. They were being burned by the Afghani extremists, and yet none of the Khalistan voices mentioned that at all. So when you see people with Khalistan flags attacking the flag of India and attacking the High Commission, which is sovereign land of Bharat itself, then you have to recognize that these are not Sikhs, these are not Punjabis, these are people who have got a different agenda altogether. And as Ramnikji has said so clearly, the people supporting them they do not have Bharat's best interests at heart. The challenge to Western hegemony is now going global. The global South is waking up. The Africans are expressing the same, shall we say, dissatisfaction with the manner in which the Euro-Christian world has taken control of the world. The Indians are doing the same, the Native Americans are doing the same, and this is now a significant pushback globally. And their response is the same response they have always had, which is to use deceit, which is to play the great game, as they call it, and try and pit brother against brother, sister against sister. It's an old story, and I'm really hoping that in this 21st century we have enough wise people to not fall for it again. Hosh has its place, Josh has its place, but when you just have Josh without Hosh, then not only do you cause harm to your own brothers, but it's your own house and your own family that falls and suffers.
Coming to what both of you have alluded to, that these attacks are being fueled from abroad, because back home in India you don't see such sentiments prevailing en masse. For instance, everybody knows how much and how many Sikhs came out in support and against the incidents that have happened abroad. So how now my first question is that how are these attacks being fueled exactly? What are the modes through which these attacks are being fueled in India and abroad? And my second question is that when you are fueling unrest in another country, it's not that you remain untouched by the consequences of that unrest. So, speaking of law and order situations, what is happening with the UK? This question is for you, Panditji. It has seen so much unrest recently, even the Leicester violence.
You know, we have a long history here in the United Kingdom of these extremists infiltrating many of our religious institutions. There are Gurdwara which we know have been infiltrated by extremists, and they proudly have Khalistan, as Ramnikji has said, written in English above the flags and everything else. And the tragedy is that those people who do not have peace, tranquility, satya, dharma, all of these things in their heart, they have been allowed access to the Sangat. And the Sangat, by and large, is innocent. The youngsters are at that age where they can passionately be motivated, and tragically, this is being done through a number of Gurdwara. And it's a tragedy when we see that even to this day, there are Gurdwara who have the charitable status of being charities, working for the well-being of all of us, openly inviting speakers who have far from charitable interests at heart. You mentioned the law and order situation. Only this morning, a report was issued by Baroness Louise Casey, and she has given the most damning judgment on the Metropolitan Police. The Metropolitan Police is the police force whose responsibility also includes providing security to foreign delegations, diplomats, and their missions. Under the Vienna Convention, the government, the host government, accepts full responsibility for providing this security. And here in the United Kingdom, it comes through the Metropolitan Police. And it's a 300-page report in which she says that the Metropolitan Police is institutionally racist, as well as being misogynistic and all sorts of other things. And the examples that she has cited, they are, I can't share with you the severity of some of the words that were reported as having been said by Metropolitan Police officers. This is the police force who ultimately is responsible for providing the protection, for finding terrorists, for finding extremists, and then dealing with them to maintain safety and security on the streets of London. It's woefully inadequate. This is not a recent development. This is a development that has occurred against the backdrop of local governments who are equally culpable. London has been administered by Labour. Sadiq Khan is the Lord Mayor. Crime has skyrocketed in that time period. And I'm sure that the Metropolitan Force is struggling to cope with just the tsunami of crime. Your viewers and watchers, and indeed Ramnikji, may well have seen the lack of response of the Leicester police force when the Mandars were being attacked, when the Om on the flag was taken down and burned. There was a review done, 1999, where the police were required to define what their purpose was. A huge amount of money was spent to make sure that this was completely unambiguous. And one of their defining purposes was to provide safety and security for the citizenry so they could continue in the normal day-to-day life experiences and practices and movements that they engage in. And yet in Leicester, the police stood to one side and watched as the temples were attacked. This is a discriminatory policy. This is not the approach that's adopted in many other communities and many other circumstances. If you have a look at what is painted as the extreme far right, whenever there is a march by people who are deemed to be the extreme far right, the police are notoriously heavy-handed and engage in literally man-to-man physical engagements. When we see members of the Pakistani community, the Muslim community here, they are given a huge amount of leeway and tolerance. You will have seen that the horrible reports about what was done across Yorkshire, so many instances of white girls being treated terribly, and yet the police didn't want to be accused of being racist. This is the allegation that's been put forward. No, it's not. It's a policy of discrimination. And I think that this has gotten to the point now where this needs to be called out. We're in the process of speaking with parliamentarians. I have another meeting tomorrow, in fact. And this will be an issue of conversation. The discriminatory manner in which the Indian origin community is continuously exposed to violence, even when warned in advance, to the detriment of our own community's well-being, but also the well-being of the wider community. This is a pivotal moment in time, and there is only a small window within which the authorities need to be able to move to address these discriminatory practices and to maintain law and order. If that window is lost, it's very, very hard to reopen it once it's closed. So hopefully we will see good news coming out over the next week or two, and hopefully the response to these purveyors of violence and community harm today will be robust, and we will see more arrests than we have seen so far.
Come back to you, Panditji, on this point of how the Met Police is treating different crimes in a discriminatory manner, and also to the report. But coming back to you, Ramnikji, I want to know that how is this violence, or how are these movements being fueled from abroad in India, and also, of course, in the foreign countries themselves?
It's the money which works. Money is the first motivation, and second is the ideological brainwashing. So, if the Western countries are supporting both, number one, the money, number two, the ideological brainwashing, it starts from way back. It's not a recent affair. If you look at who raised Taliban, you would know it was the CIA, it was the West. And now, there are several offshoots of Taliban, and you have Al Qaeda, you have so many uncountable jihadi organizations. Well, where do they get weapons from? There has to be somebody who manufactures it. Where do you get the bullets from? They're being sourced from somewhere. See, you need to understand disturbance in one country is a if I may again dare to say, a white man's business. So war is a business. War is a very big business. And there are people who benefit from people getting killed elsewhere. And like Panditji was saying that, the West has always promoted and the white man has always promoted a brown man killing a brown man. It doesn't hurt them. So long as, white people don't get killed, there's no discussion about it. I'm sorry, I have to quote an example here. When the war started in Ukraine, in Europe. So that's when, the world got its attention, and, they started thinking we need to support one side and not the other, just because it was in Europe. But the same countries were, bombarding Syria, Iraq at will. And they were in Afghanistan for 20 years, and they left back a huge cache of arms and ammunition for whom? For somebody they were fighting for 20 years. They spent billions and billions of dollars just to leave a country abandoned, just to abandon the people they came, apparently to save from the Taliban. And they had a discussion with the Taliban in Doha, and they handed over the country back to them. And not just the country, but a huge, huge cache of arms. They could have never procured such advanced technology. They could have never got their hands on American weapons. But this is what the West does. They have piled up weapons in Afghanistan. It's their business. So what you see happening, let's say what happened in Libya, what happened with Gaddafi, what happened with Saddam, or whatever. You can name any Arab, you can name any Middle Eastern country, you can name perhaps even Pakistan. So who do they care for? Nobody. War is a business. They would talk diplomacy with India and they will supply weapons to Pakistan. That's the reality. They would purchase energy from Russia, but they would ask India not to purchase energy from Russia. So there is a lot of hypocrisy in the way the West deals, because they know the true reality of themselves and their organizations or their agencies, that they are the ones responsible for destabilizing the world, creating war, and then supplying machinery, arms, bullets, these missiles, and all the asla and barut to the world. They will kill people for their business. This is what they do. So what's new about it? So if this is happening in India, they have been at it. As a matter of fact, If you go back in time and you see, Shreya, you will find that the people who fought for the freedom of this country never wanted a divided India. People get rattled when you discuss Akhand Bharat. What is Akhand Bharat? Akhand Bharat is the Bharat people fought for. The freedom of that country, which includes the present day Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and pardon me, even Sri Lanka and Bhutan. Sorry, Burma, not Bhutan, Burma. So that is the Akhand Bharat we talk about. And I'm not even going up to Cambodia because people say that Hindu roots are in Indonesia. People have recognized it. People get rattled when you talk about Akhand Bharat, but when they invade Iraq, when they kill Colonel Gaddafi, nobody discusses. आपको मंजर नजर आता है, आपको पशे मंजर नजर नहीं आता. You don't know what's going behind the scene. It was, when people die in one part of the world, there are people making money on those bodies in the other part of the world. This is the hard reality. And it doesn't matter to them whether people live or die. Whether it's a Hindu, a Sikh, a Muslim, perhaps even a Christian, they don't mind. They don't care. Because for them to profit, people have to die. So when you talk about where do they get their money from, there is a very long trail. And this has been happening for a very, very long time. It's nothing new. So Shreya, these are how it is. And India being a liberal democracy, and these people know the democratic values in the Constitution of India. They know, fault lines. They know how judiciary operates. They have injected and pumped billions of dollars into India just to destabilize India. Because a rising India is a challenge to the Western hegemony, the way Panditji was telling. So it's true. What Satish ji was saying is absolutely correct. A rising India would challenge जो वर्चस्व बोलते हैं ना, आप कहते हैं जो पश्चिमी देशों का वर्चस्व है उसको चैलेंज करता है भारत. And India is in a position today that in probably 4 or 5 years from now, you would see India in a position where no matter what the West tries, India will succeed. If you remember when you were kids, Padaji, I don't know what age you were, there used to be a song, Hum honge kamyab ek din. So that din has come, that day has come now. India is on its way to succeed and hum kamyab ho gaye hain. In fact, we're there now. And that is why the West is so rattled, because उनका जो एकाधिकार है, उनका जो वर्चस्व है, that is being diluted. And not just diluted, it's being erased and eroded. And India, eventually, Bharat will be at the position which it deserves to be in. And that's a fact. And that rattles a lot of the people in the West. And they will do whatever they can do. Shaheen Bagh, Kisan Andolan, or Amritpal, these things will become more common. But once this dust settles, the wind, the air will be so clear that the world will see India rise. The world will see India rise, and too much of hatred of the West. They would probably have to follow India for a lot of decisions that they make. Not just economically, militarily, but even diplomatically. India will lead the world. We are at the top now, and the time has come, Shreya. So this is what rattles them, and they will keep trying to destabilize India. And we have to know this fact, and we have to really play to it in a way and show them to their face that we know where you come from and we know what your intents are, and let it be very clear that there is going to be no conspiracy, no Break India gang, no Soros, no dollar, no money that can stop India succeeding now.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful message, Ramiji. But what I want to, to take this a step further, to see the shining India, the rising India, we also need everybody in India to be together, to focus on unity. So when we say that India is a union of states, the focus needs to be more on the union than the states. My question over here is, what is your message to people against ideological brainwashing, and how do you think that this can be that we can tide over this?
Yeah, पहले ना don't fall for that fake Gandhi narrative, Rahul's narrative that India is a union of states. India is India. It is one unit. The Constitution of India is the most sacred book that will guide India to the next level because it does not discriminate amongst the citizens of India, amongst the masses. Color, caste, creed, language, region doesn't matter. We are all Indians. From Kashmir to Andaman, Lakshadweep, from Rajasthan to Arunachal, we are all Indians. And that's our identity principally. They're trying to divide India by saying India is a union of states. It was at one point in time, and I'll tell you a story, and it's a very interesting story. There was time when this Bharat was, if I may, a collection of 600 plus princely states, and one of these states was Punjab, and Punjab had 12 missiles. Out of those 12 missiles, one missile was Shukar Chakia missile, and out of those the Shukar Chakia missile, there was one General Hari Singh Nalwa. He, along with his forces, alone took over Afghanistan. Durrani, the king of Afghanistan, was held captive by Maharaja Ranjit Singh for many, many years. Maharaja Ranjit Singh got out the doors, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਦਰਵਾਜ਼ੇ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਜੀ Somnath Mandir, he got back from Afghanistan when he was 17. That was the idea. So when people say India is a union of states, no. Being Indian, it's a sentiment. If you try and divide Indians, you got 44 seats, you will not get 4 the next time. Again, we are a liberal democracy, but the people of India, when it comes to Indianness, or when it comes to national security or issues relating to India, they're very, very unforgiving. You see where they put them now? You will see them devastated if somebody tries to tell the next time India is a union of states. India is a single unit, as a one unit. Now, we have a one army which awaits the political orders, which have never come though. It's one of the most potent military forces in the world. Battle hardened, experienced. So these people should remember, the enemies of India, that the only thing between them, their existence and demolition, is one political will, one order to the Indian army, and they're demolished. That's it. So the tolerance should not be taken for weakness. That's my message.
Coming back to you, Panditji, on the question of the way the UK authorities are responding to what has happened. So, the way US has responded and the way the UK has responded to the recent incidents, they're very different. Uh, they're treating very similar situations very, very differently. The UK's approach seems to be a little softer, whereas the US's approach seems to be a little more upfront. What's your take on that?
Well, I'm just still recovering from the delight I experienced listening to Ramnikji's explication of the geopolitics of the situation, and using that as the backdrop. I think it's better and easier to understand exactly why the UK and the US behave in the manner that they do. You know, if you have a look at what's happening in Bharat, an economy and a nation is actually the collective outcome of the activities and the values of the people. In Bharat, without external aid, the whole of the Bharatiya civilization, all of the citizens, are creating wealth without exporting suffering. And they're creating wealth without exporting anything at all which is causing harm, discord, instability in any other nation. Do you know, I was doing some research as to when did the West develop an antipathy and a hatred and a fear of Bharat. And there was one moment, and it was when German scholars started to study the grammar that was contained in the Sanskrit Shastras, Panini's grammar. And the scholars recorded that a civilization which is capable of producing such a masterful understanding of word, form, letter, and communication is a threat to us. And that was the catalyst when they decided that this was going to be a threat to their global hegemony. And so the seed started to be planted. Now, if you have a look at today, we have got Bharat, which is doing the same thing. It's running a nation in a manner in which the people are not suffering, they're not enslaved. And I say that seriously. In the West, the Western nations stand on slavery. They became addicted to the success which slavery gives, and sadly, even to this day, even the populations themselves in Western nations are to a large degree enslaved, either knowingly or unknowingly. And so there is a clash, there is a fear, and the fear is the same that always existed. Is there a different way for human beings to live on this earth, which is contrary to the way in which the Western powers exist? Yes, there is, and Bharat is demonstrating it. We saw it in Bharat saying we're going to export vaccines without making profit on it. We can't make profit on the suffering of other human beings. That itself, as one little indicator, would shake to the very foundations the notions upon which Western profiteering is constructed. And that's just a small example. They've also noticed that when Bharatiyas go to any other part of the world, we work in a particular way. You know, in the United Kingdom, the latest statistics showed that there are 0% in terms of Hindus in prison. And this is replicated for all members of the Dharmic communities across the world. And it's not because our mothers read the penal codes and teach them what the law is at birth. It's because we have a different way of existing. And that way itself is a Dharmic philosophy. You know, our understanding is that it's a good thing to be a human being, that this Prithvi is actually a paradise within which divinity enjoys, experiences Anand and discovery, and then moves on. That is a civilizational view which is so threatening to the hegemony of the Western civilization, and I use the word civilization loosely in the context of the West at this moment in time. So we should expect a variety of responses. On the surface, there will be overtures of friendship. I was at Raisina Dialogues only a short few weeks ago, and I watched the American delegation running the most expert charm offensive. The generals were there, the heads of the naval forces were there, and a vast array of politicians, all very generous and exuding bonhomie and everything else. And yet underneath it, I felt a little bit of discomfort that this wasn't sincere. I attended a conference recently in New Delhi, and I was invited to provide the 13th man perspective, i.e., the independent observer. And in this conference, there were members, former finance ministers of European countries, in multi-billion-dollar hedge funds, and they were all so bullish about wanting to be a part of India's success story. And then I was watching our youngsters, a number of these startup unicorns were there, and I looked and I felt, this reminded me of the Darbar of the Rajas when the East India Company first arrived. You know, it was exactly the same story being played out. We had very positive, affluent members of our business community who didn't recognize that in front of them there were people who only had one perspective, and that was, how do we make wealth here without any regard to the principles and the well-being of this nation, masquerading as friends. So we're going to get a whole array of these. In conclusion, I was asked not so long ago, Panditji, what Shastra would you recommend to young people to read so they can better navigate this new resurgent Bharat? And I said, understand the rules of divide and rule. That's the most important thing that we have to understand. We need to understand how divide and rule as a strategy works, because that is the one thing that we are going to receive in abundance from every single nation, certainly to the west of us, and maybe even others to the northeast and elsewhere. That is the one thing that we have to be able to deal with. And I was so much in agreement with what Ramnikji said about Akhand Bharat. Akhand Bharat is a civilizational idea, and it's stretched with willing participants all the way from the far reaches of Afghanistan right the way down across Indonesia without violence. We have on record Chinese ambassadors saying, India really has nothing to fear from the Chinese people because you conquered our hearts with wisdom and knowledge many, many centuries ago. It's that idea of how it is to be a human being and to live in harmony with all of life, which is a threat to the West. Because sadly, the word asur means also a being without harmony. Sur is harmony. Asur is the absence of harmony. And how can people who are asurs exist and sleep comfortably at night when they see a dharmic nation playing the ragas of what it is to be a human being on this planet at this time? This is the yudh that's underway. We really need to be able to look at things from that perspective and prevent our children from being misguided enough to get onto coaches and come down with blind rage, normally fueled by an absence of their well-being and also knowledge, and attack buildings like high commissions up and down the country and around the world. There is a big difference in terms of the perspectives, and let's work together to make sure that we educate our children not to fall in these silly little traps of divide and rule.
So beautifully explained, and as it is evident that both Panditji and Ramnikji were speaking about the same thing, that it's we have to fight against the divide and rule policy. So, taking that a step further, talking about feelings of oneness, of brotherhood, we have our Sikh brothers fighting so passionately against what has happened, these incidents. So it is quite clear that Khalistani separatists are different from Sikhs. But I want to understand what exactly is the Khalistan movement and where is the point that the Khalistan movement diverges from Sikhism?
At the very beginning, actually, to be honest. At the very beginning, you see. So, what you see is Abramization of the Sikh religion. When Pehli Paatshah Guru Nanak Sahib Sache Paatshah says, Nanak Naam Chardi Kala Tere Pane Sarvata Da Pala, which is equivalent to Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Naramaya,
Wow.
which is equivalent to, which is equivalent to Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. You're asking wellness for everybody. And then there are division factors. So at the very outset, they diverged from Sikhi. If they were in Sikhi, they would have never discussed all this. So like I said, it's a propaganda, and it's a propaganda which has been fueled by the West, and Pakistan is a tool or the instrument which actually executes it. So the money, the support, and let's say perhaps even the ideological or the physical support in the Western countries comes from their own establishment. They may masquerade as, very pro-India, politically speaking, but their agencies responsible, they are the ones to be blamed. And it's a state policy to keep this part of the world behind them so that they know the past of India was very glorious. There was a time when India used to contribute 35% of the global GDP. So they know the potential of people of India, the knowledge. This is the same DNA. I mean, we've only grown in number, you understand. The DNA remains the same. So they've tried to create a divide the society amongst religions, castes, bring in some, let's say, missionaries and convert people, so that they essentially, the idea of the West is to disconnect you from your roots. And this has always been the case. To lose pride in who you are, to lose pride in your background, to lose pride in what you had, and to look up to the West for inspiration. And sadly, our Western neighbor has fallen for the trap, and we haven't. Yes, our polity did fall for a while, but our religious leaders knew that dharmo rakshe rakshate. So you have to save the religion if you have to be saved. So despite thousands of years of invasion, the Dharma still remains. While other civilizations focused on, let's say, economical growth, some perhaps even population growth, our society has always focused on the spiritual growth. So that is the path forward, because economy will not get you solace and satisfaction, a lot of money. That can get you a lot of trouble. A lot of population can actually affect your economy, which is the other way. But spiritual growth gives you contentment with whatever you have. And contented people, satisfied people are the ones who can work best. That's my belief. That's how I look at how we have been able to survive over the years. How this Indic civilization will lead the way for the world, to tell the world what is the real term of being a human being. It's not to make money alone. Yes, earth is a part, but spirituality is the way forward. So this will be taught to the people. And you know when I talk about this, Miri Piri de Malk, and right up to Guru Gobind Sahib Sache Paatshah, we know how to use the weapon as well. ਇੱਕ ਹੱਥ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਤੇ ਦੂਜੇ ਹੱਥ 'ਚ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ. So if you have shastra in your hand and you have shastra in the other, you know when to use the weapon. That's more important. You can't be at war always. There are times for peace as well. So even when there were wars within India, within the riyasats or the princely states of India, the rules of engagement were the peasants were never used to be killed, the houses of the civilians were never used to be destroyed, the farmlands were never burnt. So destruction, demolition comes from the Abrahamic, if I may, the West. Whereas, like Panditji rightly said, we may not win lands, but we'll win the minds and hearts and souls of the people, and we're on that path. And that is what is the most dangerous phenomenon for the West, the rise of India, not just economically, but spiritually. When when a person's soul awakens, when his conscience awakens, when he knows what is dharma and what is adharma, what is sur and what is asura, by his own deeds, not just by reading, because karne se hota hai. When you do dharma yourself, when you do good deeds yourself, you know how it feels. And human being is a habit forming animal. Once you get into the habit of doing good, you will continue to do good. And that is what is the principal trait of the Indic civilization. It is not destruction. It is sarve pavantu sukhina. It is Nanak naam chardi kala. Chardi kala is like, progress. Tere paane sarbadda pala. It's good for all. That is our identity. Now, economically, you cannot confront us. Spiritually or dharma-wise, you can't confront us. And very soon, militarily also, you'll not be able to confront us. So that's when you have to be very strong militarily to protect your borders from the inside and from the outside. Like, the famous CDS Saab, General Bipin Rawat said, we have to prepare for a 2.5 front war. It's actually a dason dashaon ki jang hai that we are facing today. Militarily, he was right. ठीक है, there is an economic war, there is a physical war, there is a proxy war, there is a war from the within, there is a spiritual war also. Let's not forget the society is, they're trying to change the demography of India. They want to disconnect you from your roots. I'm being repetitive, but I'm trying to lay an emphasis on this. We have to keep ourselves connected to the roots. What vriksha can they are? That's where the shakhas, the branches are coming from. Never forget. Never forget, you're a Sikh, you're a Jain, you are a Bodh, you are a Hindu. You come from the same Sanatan root. It's the same stem which holds these branches together. They're trying to disconnect you from your roots and you want to fall flat on your face. You will not know where you come from. You become a confused lot. like we have on the western side of the Red Cliff Line. They are a confused lot because they've been cut from their roots. That's the exact kind of mayhem and chaos they want to create in India so that it doesn't rise and challenge their Vachaswa, their hegemony, if I may. That's the reason
I'm
they don't
certain
want India to grow. And much to their disliking, they will fail this time.
that they will. Speaking about how we need to be connected to our roots, uh, you know, so Sam, Dam, Dand, and Bhed. It is so clear that what we need to employ against all these techniques that have been described by Chanakya and which are being employed today from Daso Deshai, as you mentioned. We need our Shastra as well as our Shastra as well as our roots of spirituality in place. Uh, Beautiful insights by you, Ramik ji. Now, I've already gone touched upon it, but I still want to, just for the sake of clarity, know that can you tell us a little more about how Sikhism is related to Sanatan Dharma? And for instance, like if you go into the law aspect of it, various Indian laws which are community specific, they cover the non-Abrahamic religions under one umbrella and they cover all the Abrahamic religions differently. So they have so Sikhism and Hinduism, they've never been treated differently in Indian law. So I want to know how exactly are they related or similar? And yeah, basically that.
So, Shri, I'll tell you a story. You know, let's say 500 years ago, I'll not even say 500, let's say 300 years back, a mother gives birth to two boys. One grows up as a Hindu, the other grows up as a Sikh. So, 5 generations or 10 generations down the line, what question are you asking? Look into yourself first. It's the same bloodline. It's the same bloodline. So, I think, principally speaking, the question is a wrong question because the DNA, the blood, it's all the same. So when you ask me, I've already answered the question. It's the same Vatvriksh, it's the same roots. It's the same DNA. You know, a mother gives birth to two children, and the branch of the family from top to bottom would come down. Where does the question come from? It's a political question.
Absolutely.
You understand now? The difference that is being tried to create, it's a matter of practice. I'm a practicing Sikh, but I know where the roots come from. I know where I come from. So the moment somebody says, "Oh, I'm a Sikh," I saved your dadi pardadi from Abdali. That was your dadi pardadi too. So who saved whom? And what are you trying to take credit for today? Nothing. We are the same. So this is a purely political discussion, which has been created by the Gora, the white man, trying to divide the Indic society. I have elaborated on it so much. Why they want India to be divided? Why did they divide India in the first place? When I talk about Akhand Bharat, the idea of India for the Parvanas of Azadi, the people who gave sacrifices for the country, including Bhagat Singh, Shahid Azam Bhagat Singh, did he fight for a divided India? Did he want Lahore not to be a part of India? Did he want, Atak or Manawala or Gujarat in Pakistan or Balochistan or Sindh, Karachi or perhaps even Mirpur, Muzaffarabad not to be a part of India? Is that what he was fighting for? Or did he want Dhaka or Rangoon not to be a part of India? So the divisions are created by the Gora, the white man. So Shreya, I'm sorry I'm taking up a lot of time to answer,
Exactly. So
but we're
maybe
the
I should
same. Where is
rephrase
the
that. I
division?
wanted to know the similarities because we already know that we're not different. But when we hear it, say, from you or from a person who's speaking from a place of authority, it goes out like a message to the viewers that we are one. And now more than ever is the time to understand that Sikhs and Hindus were one. Everybody, every other, we're first Indians and then anyone else. Yeah. Coming to you, Pandit. Yeah.
So you answered the question actually, Pranaji. I'll just take 30 seconds. Shreya actually answered the question while summing it up. This is where I started from. I said we are all Indians. Don't call us a union of states. I said from Kashmir to Andaman to Lakshadweep, from Gujarat, from Rajasthan to, let's say, Meghalaya, Arunachal, Assam. We are all Indians. That's our primary identity. So what are these divisions for? It's the way to achieve nirvana, or it's ਰੱਬ ਨੂੰ ਪਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਤਰੀਕਾ ਬੁਲਿਆ ਰੱਬ ਨੂੰ ਪਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਤਰੀਕਾ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਪਟਣਾ ਤੇ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਲਾਣਾ. You get rid of these divisions and you move forward in life. End of the story. I mean, there are countries which don't have an official religion, and then there are others which have religions. There are countries who would put an embargo on who can be the prime minister or president of the country by religion mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are mute, by the way. So there are countries which have this embargo. If you are a non-Christian, you cannot be the head of state. If you are a non-Muslim, you cannot be head of state. Look at India; it's a liberal democracy. Pakistan call itself Islamic Republic of Pakistan. They will not allow a non-Muslim to be a president or prime minister. What democratic values are talking about? And when you talk about similarities or when you talk about differences, well, that's a matter of practice. How you attain God? वो तो रस्ते सनातन में एक नहीं सौ हैं. You are a Hindu if you believe in Shiva. You are a Hindu if you believe in Mata Rani. You are a Hindu if you believe in Bhagwan Krishna. You are a Hindu if you believe in Mahakali. You are still a Hindu. You don't believe in any of the gods. Even if you are atheist, you are accepted as a Hindu. What are you talking about? ये तो मानने का और रब ਨੂੰ पाਉਣ ਦਾ तरीका है ना जी. How do
Yes.
you reach the God? ਮਨ ਜੀਤੇ ਜਗਜੀਤ. ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਹਿਬ said ਮਨ ਜੀਤੇ ਜਗਜੀਤ. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਮਨ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਿੱਤਿਆ. You're fighting with yourself. There is a conflict within. It's not outside. You resolve the conflict inside, everything else is settled. So all these people who are creating ruckus around the world are at a conflict with themselves first. There is no peace within. And that is where, our civilization or our way of living comes in. It tells you how to get peace within. So yeah, it's a deep thing, probably for another day.
Thank you so much for the insightful answer. I will now come back to you,
Anji, I was
Panditji. You
again,
have to.
Ramnikji, we have not spent enough time in each other's company. I would love to spend more time with you. I'm going to come to Delhi next time and look you up and invite you to sit with us. I think we would have such a good time together. Shreyaji, these are words, and confidence tricksters, especially those who are empty of pockets, they only have words. And we have to be wary of the manipulators of Naam and Roop, name and form. Somebody asked me exactly the same question that you started with a moment ago. What's the difference between, Sikhi and Dharma and Hinduism and all the rest of it? And I sat, and for a moment, my mind couldn't compute it because it's an irrational sort of context to frame it in. And two things I'd say. One is the Khalistani ideology cannot coexist with the Sikhi ideology. They are mutually antagonistic. This must be recognized. Sikhi, as Sarvat Davhala, as Ramnikji has said, has principles which are totally contrary to everything the Khalistani ideology portrays. And there is another interesting thing just to note, and that is that the connection with the Islamists in Pakistan needs to be recognized, that the Islamists have an ideology which says that their prophet was the last prophet. And if you do not accept their prophet as the last prophet and all other prophets as being false, then you have no right to exist in harmony and tranquility. And Sikhi has a tradition of unbelievable people who brought a connection with divinity long after their supposed last prophet made his declarations. So anybody who knows Sikhi and the history and knows Islamist ideology will see that the two are mutually antagonistic. And only those people who do not know those two facts could fall foul of becoming radicalized by such an alien set of ideas. And as for Sikhi and Hinduism, which is a terrible thing, you know, I gave an answer once. Somebody said, we want to keep Sikhi separate. And I said, okay, ठीक है, खून दा जिहड़ा रंग लाल हुंदा, तुसी पहलां ओह लाल रंग कट के दिखा लो. Right? Sikhi is a manifestation of the most dynamic, passionate desire to preserve harmony that Bharat has recently has experienced for a long period of time. It's radiant, it's ebullient, it celebrates existence in the way that only Punjabis can. And yet you can't separate it from the lifeblood of dharmic principles. And so these are word games that nobody should really engage in. And if anybody does want to engage in it, these are our family conversations. Right? Saadi apni ghar di gall haigi hai. Je koi, if there is any misunderstanding, we can have these conversations and come to an understanding. But the moment somebody outside of the family steps into the place, ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੱਢੋ. Right? They have no conversation, they have no element to contribute in this space which is positive. And that's the solution to this. The tale of the two brothers is so apt and so simple. From a Bharatiya perspective, every single vyakti, every single person is engaged in his own religious path. And you can pick and choose, and every single person is divinity on the journey back to connecting with divinity. And so we have no antagonism between different paths and different people because we recognize that shared divinity. Others don't recognize that shared divinity either. And so we will have conversations with those who have yet to learn, as we used to in the past. उन्होंने भी थोड़ी बहुती अक्ल हौली हौली मेहनत करके पहुंच जाएगी, and we will get to that place. So and even if we don't, remember, Punar Janam says us the bar Janam leke fe bhi unan waqt demange. Bar aake samjhavange. Je jarurat hai. And so it's not a complicated situation. We have the wisdom, we have the fortitude, we increasingly have the strength to be able to remind humanity of what their real nature is. And this is what they're frightened of.
These are the precise, this is the precise reason why it was so important to have this conversation, because these are the views that need to go out to people at this time, at this very crucial time, and crucial as well as volatile, I would say. Moving on, coming to the politics aspect of it, I want to know your views with respect to the proximity of these attacks to the 2024 GA elections, and also the timing of some of the very controversial statements that Mr. Gandhi has been making.
Ramnikji, I'll speak about the British aspect because we had the pleasure of his company here not too long ago. But I'll leave the Bharati aspect to you to possibly speak about first.
You had the pleasure of his company? Oh, that's a very good thing. I've heard about him in a long time, though. Anyway, I mean, it is divisive. It is confusing. It is unclear. A man who does not know his roots. A man who does not know what he's talking about. A man who does not know who is challenging. He's challenging the spirit of India, the oneness of India, the unity of India. He's challenging the idea of India that the masses believe in, not what Nehru and Gandhi cultivated to remain in power. He belongs to a party which was raised by a white man. A.U. Hume. What do you expect of him? Indianness? Love for the country? Love for Bharat? A sentiment? How can you even expect it? The man is a PR exercise. That's it. He says, I'm a reluctant politician. He says, I'm an accidental MP. Go to the gym, take a swim. Dude, you don't have to do it. You don't have to wear a band gala and, speak in Harvard or Oxford, or you don't have to give interviews to the Gora. And when you speak, you need to be careful. Because the people of the world are watching you. The people of India are watching you. Your words are being heard and they are being taken note of. and they'll be replied by the ballot. Remember, you may speak in opposition of India for your hatred for a party in power which has unseated you and your party, which has ruled this country for the most part. Your idea of India essentially cannot be an idea of India for every Indian. It's a democratic country and people choose their governments. You've been rejected twice. You've been rejected from your own traditional seat. यार तुसी अमेठी तो चले गए हो वायनाड which is down south. उस तो बाद समंदर है. There is deep sea after that. So when you dance with the devil dances with you. याद रखो, don't forget it. You raise questions on Indian Army, the capability of Indian Army. When you say China is ingressed in India, you don't say that it's a Modi's loss. You essentially mean to say that your 1.5 million strong Indian Army is not capable of protecting the borders. When your own Papa's Nanaji gave away a lot of land, he essentially accepted a sovereign nation, Tibet, to be a part of China. Why? Who gave him that right? It's the same Congress party which is responsible for division of India. He uses this surname, I'm sorry, of a man who wanted to create a land passage between East and West Pakistan, therefore dividing India further. How do we believe in a man like that? Just because the Gora Admi, the white man, is giving him a stage. He's been given a stage to bring out a negative portrayal of India, a poor image of India. So we believe him because the Gora Admi wants us to believe him. No, that's not going to happen. He will be replied to. Certainly he will be replied to. And like I said before, अमेठी से वायनाड और वायनाड के बाद अब हिंद महासागर है भाई. देख लो if you can swim. And it's going to be a very long swim, I'm telling you, from there to the west. So, seriously, on a very serious note, again, Shreya, I don't know how much Panditji would know, but nobody takes him really seriously. Like I said, the man is a complete PR exercise. And a bulb only, you need the filament. A fuse bulb, no matter तुसी पिछो कितनी बिजली छड्डो जलदा नहीं. The man is a fuse bulb. तुसी छड्डी जाओ current is not going to glow. Because the whole idea, the entire ideology is a flawed ideology. आज तो 10 साल पहले, I don't know Panditji where you were, but as Indians, I was here, I am here, and I'll continue to be here. I'm not going to leave my country for anything. We used to be very hopeless about India. 10 साल पे no. We used to say, यार India का कुछ नहीं हो सकता. This country is done and dusted. India is hopeless. Now look at these 135 crore people. They have confidence in India. वो हम होंगे कामयाब से हम हो गए कामयाब. Matter of time now. The world wants to deny us our position. They speak in whispers. India, India, India. उन्होंने ਨੂੰ पता है we are at the world stage now. They know they can't ignore you any longer. So they will try and create disturbances within. These people supported the Kisani Andolan. 65% of Indian population directly or indirectly connects with the agriculture. We had liberalization in 91. We've seen industrial growth. We are number 1, number 2, number 3 in various manufacturing sectors. So the attempt of the government was to bring liberalization and reforms in the agriculture sector, which affects the 65% of population. If 65% population of this country is happy, is progressive, is growing, the standard of living is grown, the country is a developed country. They don't want that to happen. So they create a divide and disturbances. And these people, the Rahul Gandhis, the Arvind Kejriwals, they come out and support them because they're being funded by the Gora, by the white man. How do you trust these people? You can't trust them. They don't have a roadmap for India's success. If they had a very long time. India would have been successful already. So there are a lot of flaws in the way they conduct themselves publicly, in what their public discourse is and what their reality is. Their track record is something they can never hide. And Rahul Gandhi comes from a family and a party which has butchered Sikhs. I mean, apart from all the negativity that they have, I have a strong bias against the party. Not because what they did in 84, but also because they repeatedly rubbed it in our wounds. Sam Pitroda says, hua to hua. They make Kamal Nath the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh. They bring back Titler to the top. And after committing the heinous crimes in 84, Sajan Kumar was made a Rajya Sabha MP. He was given an MP ticket. He was heading several high positions in Government of India for a very long time. Similar case with Jagdish Titler. He was a minister in the Union Government of India. They were rubbing salt into our wounds. And that is where these Khalistanis gain traction from. So they complement each other, the Congress and the Khalistanis. They complement each other. They gave them enough breeding ground to breed discontent amongst the Sikhs against the state of India. Forgetting that it was Modi who came in power and respected the Sikh religion, whether it was Kartarpur Sahib corridor, whether it was celebrating, occasions, 350 sala, 550 sala, 400 sala. He did nothing in 84. Why do you blame Modi for 84? I don't understand. Their whole argument is flawed. So again, I mean, there are layers into layers though. But I think I've answered my question.
Ramnik
Thank
ji,
you.
and answered it very, very well, bringing out the connect between the Congress and Khalistanis. Moving on to Pandit ji.
No, I was just saying, Ramnikji, you answered the question and answered it so beautifully. There's very little I would add to it. But I visited Haridwar not so long ago and had an opportunity to spend time with the Pandas there, looking at our family lineage and history. And we have 14 generations in Punjab, the best part of 400 years. And as I mentioned, it was my grandfather who laid the foundation stone for the Gurdwara in our village. And we went to Chintapurni and brought the deity to enshrine in the mandir in our village. And this is a link and a relationship to my history, which nobody can ever separate. It's impossible to take Punjab out of the Punjabis, irrespective of their rang and roop. But the visit of our honourable leader of the opposition, I'm just trying to remember what his proper title was. It changes so much. It was received with delight and joy, isn't he? Okay, who is the leader of the opposition?
He's not a leader of the opposition, sir.
Indeed.
No,
well,
he's not.
that's
Mallikarjun Kharge.
okay.
And
it's nice to have the
this
changing
gentleman
faces
from
on the
Bengal
front
in
line,
Lok Sabha.
but the strings, we know where they go. And what you have just said is so true. When I think about his actions and his behavior, his appeal to extra national agencies and entities to intervene in the sovereign affairs of Bharat, it's reminiscent of a person who I suspect may be his previous incarnation. I immediately thought of Syed Mir Jafar Ali Khan Bahadur, the man who betrayed Bharat to Robert Clive's East India Company first, and then when he didn't get what he was hoping for, he went and made a deal with the Dutch East India Company. So he ran around the Europeans basically saying, please, please give me what I want. And he is enshrined in our memories as being a traitor. And I don't think it's any different with regard to this Parivar. They have never been in place to benefit the common citizen. Right from inception, they were a Trojan horse inserted into the political establishment of Bharat to make sure that it doesn't mature into a fully functioning democratic state running along dharmic principles. The statements enshrined in the constitution, Bharat, that is India, and the imagery of all of our ancient deities and everything else, the purpose of this parivar was to make sure that harmony never came to fruition, that coexistence never became happy coexistence never became a feature of the Bharatiya diverse family. I remember the massacre of sadhus Indira Gandhi engaged in. I think thousands of them were shot. They have never had the best interests of this nation, nor indeed the civilization at heart. And when he came here, I think it was wonderful to see so many leading lights who were so attached to the cult of the Gandhi name being publicly embarrassed at his inability to answer simple questions, the lack of any political awareness, the complete absence of compassion for the nation which has sustained his family for such a long period of time. This was not the visit of a person of integrity, honor, and dignity. There was one point when I was watching him, and it reminded me of the Palika Bazaar of the 80s, where you could buy anything and everything, and the touts would happily send you completely bogus t-shirts and trainers of you could buy a pair of trainers with all of the logos that you wanted on the same shoe. They were so desperate to sell a fake article. And he reminded me of the worst counterfeits that we have seen for a long time. The tragedy, though, is that we still have so many Bharatiyas who attach their political fortune and their well-being to a party led by intrinsically non-democratic, adharmic people. That can never succeed. And the worst part of it is it prevents something new and fresh appearing as well. It would be wonderful. We would have a great leap forward if we actually had genuine, competing, democratically appointed parties engaged in the cut and thrust of political debates to find the best solutions for the nation. So every person who is Bharatiya and who is a member of the Congress party, they are actually participating in the delaying of what would be an even more dynamic, democratic Bharat. And they should perhaps reconsider that their role is detrimental as long as this party is entirely non-democratic. It is a pseudo-monarchy, and we all know that, don't we? It's run like a theocratic cult, and that is not good for the nation. It's not good for them either. So we look forward to his next visit with anticipation, and he certainly added a light and a bit of levity to the political scene here in the United Kingdom, and we will welcome him and embrace him the next time he comes as well.
Thank you, Panditji, for and of course Ramnikji as well. It's been a riveting conversation, and with the message, of course, that a very emphatic message that Indians are one. And yeah, yes, Ramnikji, coming back to you.
Yeah. So just to add, I'm sorry, Mallikarjun Kharge, yes, he's the LOP in the Rajya Sabha, and Lok Sabha, the LOP seat is vacant because they don't fulfill the parameters. I mistook Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary is very active for a LOP in Lok Sabha. My bad. But the next time you welcome Rahul Gandhi, sir, always remember that the Congress Party and the CCP of China have a mutual agreement signed between them, the contents of which are not known.
Indeed, and we also hold very clearly at the front of our understanding that the Congress Party have a signed pact with the global socialist movement, including the Labour Party here, and that is a document which pays allegiance not to the citizen of Bharat, not to the civilization of Bharat, not to the identity, the well-being, the people, the natural resources, the treasure trove of wisdom of Bharat doesn't feature in this document at all. So we're well aware of the nature of the young man, the youth icon who visits our shores from time to time, and he is given an appropriate welcome.
Thank you, Panditji and Ramnikji, for also helping us trace the roots of the Congress Party in India. It's been an amazing conversation, very riveting and emphatic, to say the least. Thank you for reminding us of our roots, of the Shastra and the Shastra that we need to employ now more than ever. And uh, we hope that we can do this sometime again soon.
No, thank you, Shreyaji. And as I said, a pleasure, Ramnikji. I look forward to bumping into you very, very soon. I'm intending to come and visit Delhi very shortly. And I will definitely reach out to you. And Shreya, your team as well. Thank you to Citti for hosting this. It's contemporary, it's relevant. And I genuinely think it'll make a difference. There are a lot of people who need to understand the reality of what the situation is so that they too can better engage with it and not make the incorrect choices which will harm them. So thank you for creating the forum for airing these views. Jai Shri Ram.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. And I've had the pleasure of company of Panditji. And I look forward to host you whenever you come to India, sir. Be my guest at Chandigarh. And indeed, I look forward to having more enlightful discussions with you, sir. Thank you again, Shreya and Chiti Media, for connecting me to
Sat
such
Sri
an
Akal.
enlightened individual. Looking forward, ji. Namaste, Sat Shri Akal, Jai Hind.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.